Oftentimes people come up to us and ask us, who are you? And what do you do? And it's so hard to figure out, even as a writer, what to tell them. That's why we've created story capsules just for you. They're small, anecdotal ways for you to tell the world who you are and what you're about. And on this week's episode of the School for Writers podcast, I'm going to help you create your own story capsule and understand how you would use it to go out into the world. You're about to hear a whole episode on how powerful story capsules can be for you to use in your business, whether you're an entrepreneur that identifies as a writer or a writer that identifies as an entrepreneur as well, or you're somebody who's trying to figure out how to tell your story out in the world. Story capsules are great for you, which is why we've put together a whole guide just for you to figure out your own story capsules. Grab it at schoolforwriters.com/storycapsules. In that guide, you will have the actual workbook that you need to create your own story capsules and go out and use them in the world. Once again, that guide is available at schoolforwriters.com/storycapsules. And of course, that link, it's in your show notes. Okay, go enjoy the episode about story capsules, but first I'd love for you to download that guide so you can follow along. So go to schoolforwriters.com/storycapsules to get your workbook. Welcome back to the School for Writers Academy. I'm excited to talk to you about story capsules. I actually teach story capsules in other people's programs all the time. This is something I'm usually offering to other people and their audience on podcast interviews. I'm super stoked to be able to offer it today on my own podcast for my own people, for you all to hear about the power that story capsules can play in both your business and your writing. So let's get started. First off, let's talk about what even are story capsules. Story capsules are short, pre-rehearsed anecdotes or stories that you can tell to capture your audience's attention, engage their emotions, and humanize your interaction. Okay, so what does that even mean? So it's a story that you use maybe on your about page or in your bio or when you're talking to somebody or on the inside of your book flap or on a blog post. There's so many places in which you can use these stories, but it's a story that will help you and connect with your audience on an intimate and deep level. Now, that's all that marketing really is. They're stories to help you connect with your audience on a deep level. So our goal today is to help you get started in creating your first story capsule. But we have an amazing guide for you that describes everything you need to know about story capsules, and it's free. You can find it at schoolforwriters.com/storycapsules. It will give you a whole workbook that you can listen along with this episode or read later as well, so you can go and fill it in and create story capsules for yourself. Because we're not here for you to just actively listen. We're here to get you to actually take action and implement these things so you can build a thriving writing career. Okay, so now you know what a story capsule is. What should it be like? What is the point of it? Well, first, it needs to reflect who you are and how you exist in this world. Second, it needs to tell your unique story, not the story of somebody else. Yes, Oprah is inspiring, but you're not here to tell her story or encapsulate her life, but to tell your story and encapsulate your life. And the goal is to be open, honest, and real. And we'll talk a little bit later about protecting yourself in that open, honest realness. So the three most powerful stories in your business are the origin story, so why you started your business. And yes, you are a business person as a writer. If you are getting any money whatsoever for your writing in any way, shape, or form, you are in business as a writer. So if you're like, I don't need to know this, I'm not in business, I'm not building a brand, blah, 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 I don't need a market, I don't have anything. No, stop that right now. Start thinking of yourself as being in business. Yes, I know capitalism sucks, and I hate that we can't just create our art to create our art and get paid for that. But anytime you're receiving money, that is you having a business transaction with somebody, and I want you to receive a lot of money for your writing. I want writers to have lots of money and support other writers. So you're in business, and your business, it needs to tell a story if you want people to come towards it. And your origin story, the first of the most powerful stories in your business, is so important. It's why you decided to go into business. What made you want to be a writer? What made you tell this particular story? Why did you write that book? Why are you selling that course? Why are you interested in social media content copying? Whatever you got to wherever you are, what was your first story you ever told in high school? Like, those are your origin stories, how you got to where you are and what made you start this journey. The second is your transformation story, how you went from A to B. You were here, now you're here. That's your transformation. And what happened to get you there? That's your transformation story. And then the third is your failure story. Yes, I know you don't really want to build a brand around how you failed once. That could be embarrassing. But actually, people, they fail too. Shocking, I know. We fail as humans. It happens all the time. I fail. I have tech fails all the time. And when I talk about that failure, when I talk about those times where it didn't go as I planned, I'm actually able to bring my clients in and make them feel better about the times where their life didn't go as planned. So the three most powerful stories in your business are, to recap, your origin story, your transformation story, and your failure story. When you're choosing what story to tell, and we'll have a whole process for how you choose story later in this episode, so keep listening. But when you're choosing what story to tell, there are some things you want to think about. One, you want to share your scars, not your wounds. So if something is still really hard to share, if you're still going through it, if you're still grieving something, if there is something that you have not healed completely or as completely as you can, that's not a good thing to choose for your story capsule. Yes, that might be a story that you can share in your Instagram stories or on your newsletter or in your blog post or with friends or in your journal or even in a work in progress book. But it's so much better to have the perspective of a scar instead of an open wound. Not only does that make for better writing usually, but it also allows you a little protection when you're out in the world telling these stories. Listen, we all know how people can be on social media. We all know how trolls can come out on the internet. If you are sharing a wound and they touch that, that's going to hurt more than if they're sharing a scar. So that's why I always encourage people. It's not that I want you to silence when you're going through something hard. Instead, I want you to protect yourself and keep that more private and share the public scars that don't hurt when someone might poke them. Second, you want to choose a story that's your story, not someone else's. Again, that example, I don't want to go and choose a story capsule that's about Oprah's transformation. I want to talk about my transformation. You need something, third, that exemplifies your brand, gives you an example of why your brand exists. Your origin story is not just how you got your dog, but it's how you got your dog and why that got you into dog training and why you write books from the perspective of dogs now. 4, it needs to be expandable and shrinkable. It needs to take about 2 to 3 minutes to tell it, but you could also shorten it to maybe 30 seconds if you needed to. And 5, it needs to be something you love to tell and can repeat often. So with all of that in mind, we're going to start working on you creating your own story capsule. There's a 6-step process to creating your story capsules. And if you want, I have a whole workbook just for you on these 6 steps. And you can get it at schoolforwriters.com/story capsules. And that is free. So go grab yourself a copy of it because it is so helpful and so great. Okay, so how you create a story capsule for yourself. First, you make a list of life-defining moments. Second, you cross off any stories that are still in progress or wounds that exist and don't have a solid ending yet. Third, you circle stories that call out to be told, stories that are called to you. Fourth, you pick your 3 stories, your origin story, your transformation story, and your failure story. Fifth, you take one story and write everything you can remember about it, everything down that you can remember about it. And 6th, then you practice telling that story in various lengths. Put it on your about page, put it on your social media bio, use it in a blog post, put it in your email list. It's great for interviews or podcast episodes. It is such a great way to go out into the world and practice telling these stories. And yes, you have to tell these stories. As Sue Monk Kidd, an amazing author, said, Stories have to be told or they die. And when they die, we can't remember who we are or why we're here. Your story capsule is a great way to remind yourself and the world who you are and why you're here through telling your story. So to recap, story capsules are short, pre-rehearsed anecdotes that you can tell anywhere you need to in your business. 2, the goal of a story capsule is to capture your audience's attention, engage their emotions, and humanize your interactions. And 3, there is a 6-step process to creating your own story capsule, and you can download that guide at schoolforwriters.com/storycapsules. When you have your story capsule ready and when you want to share it out into the world, tag us at School for Writers or tag me at Lauren Marie Fleming. I would absolutely love to see your origin story, your transformation story, and your failure story. I'd love to see the ways in which you use story to connect with your audience. So tag us at Lauren Marie Fleming and at School for Writers when you create and use your story capsules. And get your story capsule guide at schoolforwriters.com/storycapsules. Of course, that link, it's in your show notes, but it's schoolforwriters.com/storycapsules to get your full story capsule guide, because the world needs your story now more than ever. This week's book recommendation is none other than The Stand by Stephen King. And y'all, to say that I would finish a 40-hour audiobook and think, I wish there were more of this. I never thought that possible. 40-hour audiobook, but it went by like so fast because the story is so good. And I'm really glad that I listened to this at the end of quarantine for COVID. I know the pandemic isn't completely over, but I'm so glad at the end of quarantine for COVID versus at the beginning, because the premise of The Stand is that a virus has gotten out and killed 99.4% of the population. And it follows the last percent that's left as they try to battle the good and evil of what can come up of this new society. Not only is this a very great book, it also is a really great study in how to have character development. There are many characters that are separate but come together. They're on this side, that side, they switch over. Are they good? Are they bad? How do you have a virus as its own character? How do you have good and evil as their own character? It is such a beautiful portrayal of a deep dive into character existence and character development that as a writer, I feel like I'm a better writer having read this. Now, it is a giant, thick book, and I don't really like holding giant, thick books. I know that they have value, but I have double jointed thumbs. It actually physically hurts me. So I listened to it on my audiobook. I listened while I moved into my new place and unpacked everything. I listened while I went on walks in the park. I listened while I was cleaning house. I listened laying on the floor at night when I didn't have a bed or a sofa, but I needed to escape. It is such a great, really, really, really well narrated audiobook that I would highly suggest grabbing it on audiobook. Once again, the book is The Stand by Stephen King, and you can grab yourself a copy of it through our Libro.fm link down below. And not only does that get you a free audiobook, but it gets me a free audiobook as well. And listen, if you're going to get a free audiobook, a 40-hour audiobook is a really good deal for free. You can get the link to that ability to get the 1-for-1 free audiobook credit at Libro.fm and using the link below. Or if you don't have double joints like me and you want to hold the giant book and read through The Stand, you can grab it at bookshop.org using the link in our show notes. Not only does that allow you to get it and support a local independent bookstore for you, but that's an affiliate link, so it helps support the School for Writers as well. Once again, y'all, you really need to read it. I had people tell me my whole life, you really need to read The Stand by Stephen King, but seriously, I'm so glad I finally did. You really need to read The Stand by Stephen King. It is a beautiful example. It is dated, yes, there's so much dated in the 1970s that it was written, but it's also such a beautiful example of character development. So if you are a writer who wants to work on being better at creating a scene and characters, I absolutely want you to download yourself an audiobook or a physical book copy of The Stand by Stephen King.